I believe it was Vivek recently that I was reading one of his quotes on X, and he started talking about just the kind of the immigrant mindset versus the American mindset. In the Indian culture, they don't allow their kids to play sports. Vivek would say that that's not the program to the Indian culture. The program of them is that they want their heroes to be Screech from Saved by the Bell, not Zach. They want the nerds to be the ones that are heroes.
I'm curious, from that perspective, can you see programming that you actively wanted to change? Like, does that ring true to you?
Welcome to the Jason Forrest Show. I'm here with my wife, Mary Forrest, and today we're talking about how your life isn't controlled by chance. It's actually controlled by your programs. If you can change your programs, you can change your life. All right, Mary, this concept has absolutely shaped me. I remember a quote I heard one time from Wayne Dyer that we had in the hallway of our office. And that quote was, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And you and I have been a huge student of Wayne Dyer. I've listened to, I would assume, everything he's ever written and all of his PBS podcast. But that quote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It on the surface, it sounds so easy, but to me it's very, very powerful and very meaningful. Because when you really unpack it, it talks about how you can have endless amounts of miracles just by changing your perception, by changing your perspective on something. And when you see things differently, like everything changes for you. And it's interesting because this quote, we're going to unpack this quote today. We're going to unpack how throughout my life, and I know throughout your life, we had these kind of pinnacle moments where we realized that we were being programmed. We were being programmed by our friends, by our parents, by our the experiences that we were having, by our teachers, by college, by just all kinds of, by the media, by the books we read, and we both had these moments where we decided to wake up and realize that these programs are happening to us, but we can be someone that chooses our programs and therefore changes our life. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
I love that. I think that's real adulthood and maturity, is recognizing that it's not all, you have control now. And so if things aren't working the way you want them to, just change that. And just like your Wayne Dyer quote, the quote or the moment that always stands out for me that was such a shift is when we were studying with Susan Stageman. And she said at the beginning of she went into NLP studies having a terrible childhood. And she came out of her studies from NLP having a wonderful childhood. And I thought that was so interesting that she shifted the way that she looked at everything. She changed her programming and all of a sudden was able to be very appreciative and respectful and happy and proud of her upbringing and how she grew up.
Yeah, that you're 100% correct on that. And speaking of NLP, the most famous NLP master practitioner that was taught by the same teachers that you and I were taught by is Tony Robbins. And I remember hearing him recently on stage. He talked about there are two things that really kind of shape our reality, and that's the emotions that we have and the meaning that we give it. And it's that second part, which is that meaning, goes along with the same thing that Susan Stageman said, as well as Wayne Dyer said, that we can change the way you look at things. We can change the meaning that we have around something. It changes everything. So if two different people are going through the same experience, like for example, coronavirus. I remember when coronavirus happened in March of 2020, and there were two different perspectives. There were people that had A thoughts and people that had B thoughts, and A thoughts were these average thoughts, and those thoughts were, coronavirus is now going to dramatically impact my income and impact my life, and I now need to lower my sales projections. I need to lower my sales forecast. And there are other people who had B thoughts, which I of course called baller thoughts or Warren Buffett thoughts. And those Buffett thoughts, those baller thoughts were this is exactly what's happening, is that the coronavirus now is happening for me, not to me. And now that it's happening this way, I can take advantage of it, and I can I can do the things that other people are unwilling to do because they're scared, because they're afraid. And now I can see things differently. I can take advantage of the opportunity, not take advantage in the sense of like a manipulative, negative way, but run towards something that everyone else is normally avoiding.
Exactly. So I believe, well, before we jump too far into programming, would you take a moment just in defining when you say the word programming, what do you mean?
So if we think of our programs are any experiences that we've had throughout our life. So it would be the books that we've read when we're a child. It would be the teachers that we've been either given to or forced to have through our school systems or our parents. It's our parents' friends. It's our friends that we had growing up. We've heard some kind of famous quotes before that were the exact same. These might be a John Maxwell quote. I'm not exactly sure, but we're the same person today as we will be in 7 years, except for the books that we've read and the people that we've experienced. I mean, that was written, of course, before the internet days and before YouTubes and podcasts and all kinds of stuff. So now they would probably add the TikToks and podcasts and other things besides just the books. But so programming is all of those experiences is what programs is. And those programs, they create our beliefs. And so our beliefs are what we think to be true versus our programs are what we've been told to be true. It doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that we've been told that it's true. And most of us, research would say 98% of us have not really woken up and decided, is this really true to me or not true to me? And so it shapes our beliefs, which we think to be true, which shapes our emotions, which emotions are, again, what Tony Robbins said, how we feel about something is really shapes what we're going to do, which is true. So that emotion in the sense of, do we feel courageous around the situation or do we feel scared around the situation? Which of course shapes our motivations, which is, do we want to do something or do we have to do something? Meaning if we're coming from an emotion of fear, then anything that we're asked to do is going to be more of a have to versus a want to, versus we're coming from an emotion of love or from a feeling of abundance, then of course that's going to make us want to do something, which will drive our behaviors, which means we engage versus react, which drives our results. And the people who are always proactive versus reactive, they're always achieving more in their life than the people who are taking more of a reactive kind of sit around and wait mentality.
Got it. So everything that's around us that we're being told, that we're being exposed to, really, it could be told passively or directly, and then that shapes the way that we're seeing the world. That would be in becoming who we are. 100%.
Yeah. So if you have I believe it was Vivek recently that I was reading one of his quotes on X, and he started talking about really just the kind of the immigrant mindset versus the American mindset. And he's his family, I guess we're all immigrants, but he's a more modern immigrant. And he was talking about how in the Indian culture they don't allow their kids to play sports, which is really interesting because they would say that in their culture they don't want to heroize. Is that the right word? They don't want to put on a pedestal the athletes, which is what we do in America. They don't want to. I remember when I was growing up, Saved by the Bell. I mean, of course, I wanted to be Zach Morris more than anyone else, and maybe a little dose of Slater from his muscles, right? And so he was the cool one. Or growing up, or even a little later in life, it was 90210, and my hero was probably Dylan McKay and maybe even Brandon Walsh. But these are the people that we were kind of turning into heroes, that we were turning our icons. And Vivek would say that that's not the program of the Indian culture. The program of them is that they want their heroes to be Screech from Saved by the Bell, not Zach. They want the nerds to be the ones that are heroes. I share that with you because just right now, just think of the two different cultures. Think of the American culture where all we do is want our kids to play sports and the heroes are the NFL athletes. And then you have this Indian culture where their heroes are scientists and nerds. And then now just fast forward 40 years and see the difference in the two cultures. And what my dad would say is is when I was younger, I remember him telling me this, that because I was, again, a subject to the culture of sports is everything. And, studying in school was a very nerdy thing to do. But I'm sure you could just kind of visualize my dad saying this, but I would say, Dad, that kid is such a nerd. He's like, why is he a nerd? Well, he's getting straight A's, and back then I had a 2.2 GPA in high school. And he would say, well, you know what you call a nerd later in life? And I said, no, Dad, what is it? And he said, you call him boss. And it's interesting, right? But that's two different perspectives, that a nerd when you're a kid becomes your boss later in life. And man, what if you actually, what if I could go back to the child version of myself and really listen to my dad? What if I can really listen to him? I don't think I would have a 2.2 GPA. I'd probably have a different GPA back then in that life. And fortunately later on, I decided to change all of that, but I wish I would have changed it earlier.
Well, I think the what's so humorous to me watching and listening to you is the culture is so evident, right? Because you're saying the word nerd, not intellectual, not academic, not valedictorian, but nerd. I mean, there's our culture right there in all of it. What's interesting is I believe it's when we were studying with Dr. Bruce Lipton that we learned that the percentage was so high. It was said that our programming, by the age of 7, we were programmed like 75, 85, 90% of our programming was intact. I don't remember the exact number, but I remember being blown away at how high it was. So I'm curious, from that perspective, can you see programming from birth to 7 that you still see in yourself today that you actively wanted to change? Like, does that ring true to you?
I definitely think so. I was born I was raised as a latchkey kid. And so for those who don't know that, as a kid from the 80s where both parents worked. And so the way that the way I was raised was my parents usually left for work before I went to school. And so they would give me, kind of lunch money, or they would give me money for dinner afterwards. And so I'd have whatever, the money left on the table with a note. And then I would walk myself to school. And this was in like 4th grade, elementary school. And so I'd walk to school, and then I'd come home and then I would take care of myself, and I would walk across the street. I was raised in Plano, Texas, and I'd go to the Chinese buffet, and I would eat food, and I created a very kind of strong independence really in myself. And I remember that. I remember that when I was a little kid. I also remember when I was in 6th grade, there was this moment that 100% kind of shaped my life and created a lot of lessons in me. And I was a skateboarder. So one of my favorite magazines back then was Thrasher magazine. Do you remember Thrasher magazine?
No.
Yeah, you don't remember that. So remember Thrasher magazine? I had a side spike. Again, Zach Morris was like my hero. But there was this time where I was really into skateboarding, and I was doing this trick, and I was coming up, and I fell down and broke my hip. I didn't know I did at the time, but I'm now laying there in the backyard, and my dad comes out a little after 10 o'clock, and he's like, Jason. And, I'm kind of yelling for my dad, and I say, Dad, I can't move. And so he picks me up and carries me to my bedroom. And the next morning, I still couldn't move. And so he takes me from hospital to hospital. And of course, a 6th grader doesn't break their hip. That's not a thing. It was a very kind of freak accident. And so fortunately, I was able to go to the Scottish Rite Hospital, and they put me in a body cast, and I was in this body cast for 8 weeks. And the reason why I share this story with you is because it was a very kind of life-defining moment for me, because several things really happened to me in that time. Number one is during that time that I was in this wheelchair, and I wasn't going to school. I was being homeschooled. And so my dad would go get the curriculum, and I have to do it myself. And I have to be self-independent. I have to figure out the work myself, just like how now Elizabeth is kind of have to be self-independent. And then I remember my grandmother sent me all these Hardy Boys books. And so I had, 10, 15 different Hardy Boys books, and I would read them cover to cover because that was all I was able to do. I didn't have a Nintendo. I couldn't go outside and play sports. I couldn't do anything that I was normally used to do. And so in that moment, I was basically kind of forced to reprogram myself. I didn't choose that. That would not have been my choice. It was actually more of a forced kind of forced programming. But that was an interesting kind of moment in my life from a reflection perspective, because my dad to this day would say, do you remember the one semester where you had the highest GPA like before college? And I'm like, yeah, Dad, it was when I was in a body cast for 8 weeks and I was forced to do nothing but study. I got 100 on everything because that's all I was able to do. And again, it's just an interesting, there's so many lessons I took from that. I took another lesson that, just the lesson of your father and how just kind of true love of, my dad like carrying me every day and taking my bed and picking me up and really taking care of me. But yeah, those are programs. And I think anyone, if we really look back on your life and you look back at these kind of pivotal moments, what you'll notice is that these programs in your life, they 100% shape your like beliefs and thoughts and expectations of reality today. And I think it's important for people to be awake and kind of wake up and start to notice those programs, and then decide, are those programs that are currently serving you? Are they currently helping you? Like, that's a program that's helping me. Like, that's a program I look back and go, I wasn't a dumb kid. I just was a kid who focused more on skateboarding than focused on reading and doing homework. But when I realized that, it's like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't born dumb. I just chose to focus on reading. But all of a sudden, when I was forced to do that, I became very good at reading and learning things.
So would you say that before then you didn't know that you were capable of good grades?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would be what Napoleon Hill would say in his book, Outwitting the Devil, which 100% everyone should read this book. I've read this book multiple times now. Get the audiobook. It's a phenomenal book. But he would say that 98% of the population are drifters. And so a drifter basically means is that, again, they haven't woken up yet. They haven't taken the red pill from the Matrix. They haven't realized that they're just kind of a victim of their programs, and they don't realize that they have they're not conscious beings of choice, and they don't realize they have the ability to just say, at this moment, I can change. I can be a different person. And no, I did not know that. I did not know that. I didn't know that, and probably till many, many, many years later. Does that make sense? It probably didn't really sit in, because my dad would just kind of make fun of me, right? In a good way, not a negative way, but he would make fun of me. He goes, realize the only time you've made straight A's is when you were forced to, and you were, homeschooled, and you were, in the wheelchair. But I didn't let it sit in, though. I mean, you don't let that stuff sit in until you're probably, at least in my case, until I was probably 18 or 19.
Got it. So it was a touch of capability, but really leaning into it didn't happen for a while.
100%.
What's another programming from your past that you can see one of those shift moments?
I mean, several come to mind, but I would say the biggest one happened when I was in high school. And so I was a obsessed football player, so obsessed that I was an all-state football player, rush linebacker in Texas, which is of course a big deal, and played for Dallas Jesuit and broke all these records and sacks and tackles, and for people who, but it just basically means that I was extremely aggressive, and I like to hit people, and I like to tackle people. That's basically what it is for those who don't know what I'm talking about. But I was obsessed over it. So obsessed that I worked out in the morning, worked out in the evening. It was all I cared about. Well, what's interesting is when you kind of think about these identities that you have in your life, and identities are even identities really are even almost below programs, because identities really are kind of fixed beliefs that we it's hard for us to kind of break away from. So, which we'll talk about on another episode. But I had this really identity that I was an athlete, I was a jock, and I was going to an all boys prep school, and so there's a lot of people there that I would kind of see them as academics, where I saw myself as a jock. And of course, back in that time frame, when you saw yourself as a jock, you also saw yourself as a dumb jock. The whole idea of a student athlete, that was not a phrase that we used in my generation. That was like later on, people started saying, "Are you a student athlete?" I didn't understand student and athlete in the same sentence. I would never say that. So I was a dumb jock. I was not a student athlete. And so because of that, again, I got a 2.2 GPA in high school, and And I had this moment though, my senior year, that I realized I'm not going to play football in college. I did get some scholarships to some D2 schools, and I was very excited about that. But I knew it wasn't in the cards for me. And so I wanted to change my life. I'm not sure why. I just had this kind of moment that I needed to do something different, and I wanted to go to TCU, which was in Fort Worth, and we lived in Plano. My parents lived in Plano, and it was about an hour away. And so I wanted to go there. I applied, of course, and I got rejected. And I remember this line that my dad would always say to me over and over again, and that is, he would say, that you are the problem, you're the solution, you succeed or you fail, it's all on you. And that's a big phrase that he would say to me, which is interesting because that phrase served me extremely well in football. I mean, that's what made me this all-state football player. Was I always believed that I succeed or I fail, it's all on me. I am the problem, I'm the solution. So if I wanted to start, as a junior and beat out the seniors, then I am the problem, I am the solution. It's not just because they're older than me that they just get the ability to start. I can actually be better than them and start. And so I did use that belief system and that program. I used that program to shape a belief system of empowerment and, I am the hero of my own life. But in this one moment, I decided, I'm going to take that same program and I'm going to apply it to changing my life and getting into TCU. And so there was this one moment where I got into my pickup truck and I drove about an hour to TCU, and I cold knocked on the dean of admissions door at TCU. And again, I did not have an appointment. I cold knocked, and I handed him the admission letter, and I said, "Sir, I've been rejected here to TCU because of my grades, but I've been told that school is about 90% effort and about 10% intelligence. Is that true or false?" And he said, "No, that's probably about true." And I said, "Well, let me tell you the effort that I put forth to become an all-state football player, to break all these high school records. And if you give me a chance, then I will put that same effort towards being a student here at TCU." And it always makes me emotional to think about this kind of very defining moment in my life. And he said, "I've never had a student plead their case. I've always had the parents plead their case for their student." And he said, "So I'm going to take a chance on you." And he said, "But here's the deal." He goes, "I don't want you to make me a fool. So I'm going to give you basically one shot. And that one shot is that if your GPA ever falls below a 3.0 in any semester, then you're immediately out." And that was so I took it. I took the shot, but again, I was not an academic. So the advice that I give, that I want people to really hear right now, is as soon as you start to kind of change your beliefs, you start to change your identity, and you start to kind of put yourself in a different path, you're going to have remnants of your past programs that are going to kind of come in. And so the remnants of me was, again, I was a dumb jock. I got a 2.2 GPA just the semester before going into this new, private university, a very difficult school at the time. And so I just, I just took certain classes, and one of the first classes I took was business calculus. Okay. So I know you know what I'm thinking here.
I dropped business calculus.
Yeah. Well, so that phrase that you just said of "I dropped it," I didn't know that was a thing. So again, remember, I had past programs that were really holding me back, and no one had taught me that you could drop a class. I didn't know that was I didn't know that was a thing. And so I just thought you had to take what you had to take, just like in high school. And so I'm taking this class. My first test grade was I don't know, a 41 or 42. It was something just so incredibly bad. And so I go to the teacher and I kind of tell him what's happening. She didn't tell me I could drop, which is crazy. So I thought professors were supposed to do that, but she didn't tell me I could drop. And so I just said, what do I do? And she said, you get a tutor. And so of course I hired this tutor, probably an Indian kid. I'm probably sure who I hired at the time. So I hired this kid to this other student to tutor me. And there's only four main grades in that class, and my last the final exam I got a 99 on it, which boosted me up to a 70 in that class. And fortunately, I had enough other A's that my overall GPA that semester was a 3.0. So I share that as a phenomenal metaphor, I hope, for people that as soon as you decide, which I think decision is the key word here, because decide comes from the Latin root of like an incision, which is to cut. So deciding is to cut off alternatives. But as soon as you make a decision to do something, like in my case, I say, I'm going to be an academic. I'm going to go to TCU. I'm going to change my life immediately. Well, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have little tentacles of the past that are going to kind of lock onto you and try to pull you back to your old belief systems. And that's what I had. I had those little tentacles, and so it was definitely a very strong kind of fight in me that first semester that really changed everything. And of course, everything changed. Everything changed from that day forward. I never looked back. I graduated from TCU in 3.5 years with honors, and then went on to get my MBA in marketing. But that was a decision. That was a deciding moment in my life that said, you know what, I'm going to change this program. And this program that I currently have of being a dumb jock is not serving me anymore. And I 100% can just put forth the effort and just start putting forth the habits and the rituals to become something different. And the last thing that I'll share with you around that was super helpful for me is another advice that I gave to my dad, or that my dad gave to me, is I said, well, you know, people at this school, you know, I don't want to be seen as a dumb jock. And this is what he said to me that was extremely powerful advice. He said, Jason, no one knows who you are at TCU. And no one knows. He goes, so they don't know that you're a dumb jock. They don't know that you got a 2.2 at GPA. He's like, honestly, don't tell them. Like, don't tell them, because they don't need to create any kind of opinions of you. So you just act as if. He goes, and the second thing you need to do, so one, act as if, just act as if you're an academic, act as if you came there on academic scholarship, just act as if. And then number two, he goes, find the smartest people and just hang out with them. Just hang out with them and just like do what they do. And that was super important advice to me, because one of my roommates in college was a guy named Matt Beatty. He was there on academic scholarship. Another guy named Walker Moody, who goes on to the Air Force and now works, I believe, at Goldman Sachs. And both of these people really became like kind of pure programmers in my life, right? So for example, like Matt, I remember this one night we were in our dorm, and I looked at him and I said, Matt, you know, what are you reading? And he said, well, I'm just reading this book that I brought from home. And I said, but that's not assigned reading, right? That's not college reading. It's like you're reading this by choice. And again, remember, I had these past programs, I had these tentacles that were kind of pulling me back from my old identity. And so I'm trying to be an academic, but I didn't realize that part of being academic means you read by choice, not by force. And he said, yeah, my mom always told me that those who don't read are no better off than those who can't read. And I was like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And he basically was saying that, you know, that most human beings are illiterate by circumstance. You know, most of the human race at that time couldn't read. They hadn't been taught to read. And he said, so they're illiterate by circumstance, but what we don't want to be is illiterate by choice. Meaning, if you've been given the gift of literacy, the gift of being able to read, then you want to be able to maximize that gift. You want to be able to use that gift. And so that was a big thing. And so that was kind of an early program, or a program that kind of helped shape my new identity of being academic and my beliefs around that. And then my last example of that, or last story, is something that Walker Moody told me. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm super into this whole reading thing, right? And I'm trying to start to read. And which is really funny, because now I've written like 11 books and whatever. That's all we do now is read and write stuff. But I remember going to Walker, and I had this kind of past tentacle. I had this little kind of past grip, this past identity that was really holding me back. And the alibi, or the excuse that I gave at that time to Walker, is I said, you know, Walker, I see that you're reading all these books. You read a book a week, and I said, I just don't know how I can catch up. You know, I'm 18 years old. I never read, you know, books up until that moment, except from like the Hardy Boy books when I was in the 6th grade. And he said, look, if you just commit to reading even a book a month, he goes, in probably a year, maybe less, you will have read. So in 12 months, in 12 books, you will have read probably more than like 80% of the human race. And I'm sure we can look up the stat and actually figure out what that is. But from that day forward, that's what I decided. I decided to read a book a month. That's the least that I read. Normally it's a book a week. and that was since that day at 18. It was my freshman year at TCU when he gave me that advice, and I never looked back. And so, I'm 46 now, 18, do the math as far as, how many books that I've read that have completely changed my life, and changed my everything.
Well, what a great example of taking control of your programming. Instead of giving it over to other people or what's on the radio or what's on TV, is choosing what you're going to read. And I think that real consciousness of looking at it and choosing, okay, I want to be programmed by this person. I want to be programmed by this, I think is fantastic. And I love the advice from your dad on you can be anybody. Don't tell them about that GPA. And it reminds me, growing up, I moved about every year, sometimes 2 years, but about every year, was starting a new school and meeting other adults in our lives. I know so many times they'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That's got to be so hard." And there were parts of it that were hard, but for the most part, I learned, what your dad was teaching you, which is I can show up every year and be whoever I want to be. And if something didn't fit right, if all of a sudden, dumb jock didn't fit right, I can go in and be something totally different and can show up as a different person. And I don't have anybody else that's going, wait a second, that's not you. Hey, and that's the beauty of a new place and a new adventure, a new school is there's no one going, no, Jason, I remember you're the dumb jock. Don't read the book. What are you doing? You have none of that outside influence doing it. So it's a really interesting thought as well on sometimes if we want to change our identity or really do a shift in that programming, a change in environment can be really helpful, it seems like.
It can be really helpful. And so what would your advice be to people who feel like they're an imposter? Because I know that's probably a big feeling that sometimes people have. I know there's kind of an over teaching right now of, your authentic self is your best self and kind of all these statements like that. And to me, I understand the positive intention around that. But I also get kind of scared sometimes because I feel like sometimes that gives people an excuse that it's like, oh, well, this doesn't come natural to me, or this is not easy. And so therefore it's not authentic. And so since it's not authentic, I probably shouldn't do this. And I guess now I'm just going to be a victim of my life, a victim of my past reality. And I don't want people to think that. I mean, so what advice would you give people, or what did you experience when again, you had to go to a new school and you had the opportunity to kind of almost fake it you faked it till you become it, right? You changed how people saw you. But I'm sure you had did you have some inner conflict around that at all?
I'm not sure if I did at those moments. I've definitely felt a lot of being an imposter at different times in my life. And to me, imposter is a feeling that's a stepping stone to your next level of greatness. You're not going to get to the next better version of you without feeling the imposter feeling. So I think as soon as you feel it, it's like, oh, okay, I'm on the right track. I'm now stepping into this new version of me, this better version of me. And I'm not 100% there, but that's okay. And that's all the feeling is saying, is that we're in a transition time. We have those tentacles you were talking about of the old version of us, and we have this new part that we're stepping into. So I think it's not the feeling that's the problem, it's the meaning people give it. So the feeling, to me, the meaning I give it is, yes, perfect. I'm about to be something better. But I think a lot of people, and I've seen myself do this in the past before I fully embraced it, would get there and go, oh, this doesn't feel like me, I'm out. And they, abort mission, I'm out. I'm going to just go back to the old version of me that feels very comfortable. Instead of just, don't give it the meaning. It's just, it's a step. It's the next step to becoming the next version. We don't ever jump from I'm this identity to this, right? You didn't go from I'm dumb jock to I've written 11 books, right? There's a whole process. And learning is a through time process. Change is a through time process. We don't jump from one thing to another. It's gradual, which means it's on a spectrum, and I'm a little bit more still over here, and then I'm more over here, and then I'm more over here. And I didn't have as much of the dumb jock, but I was at a school earlier in my life, in my middle school years, where it wasn't cool to be smart. And so I had good grades, but I remember lying about my grades. Like people, what'd you get on the test? And I'm like, oh, I got a C. It was so hard. And I had an A, so I knew, so I was in that where I just wasn't truthful about. And then all of a sudden I jump into this school, a boarding school in Maryland. They only accepted 5%. And I have a similar story where I did not have the test scores or the grades to get in, but I had a lot of passion and lot of drive. And so I was the one public school kid that they let into this school that year. And so I knew that. So part of me, I had on this, like I'm the dumb public school kid, even though I had been very successful at my public school, but everybody had a much greater education than I did going in. And when I got there, there was definitely transitions there on, do I belong and should I be here? And, but again, that's just part of the steps. And we're going to get that. If you want to keep being something more, you want to get further in your career, there'll be moments where you're like, I can look back at times where I'm looking around a room and I'm like, how did I get into the room with all of these genius people? Do I even belong here sitting as part of this discussion? Be quiet, Mary, so no one realizes. And then going, wait a second. No, I've been invited in. I'm here. I'm sitting in the room. I don't know what I'm going to add yet, but it's the step. It's the step. And now it's cool to be able to invite other people into the room. It's my room now.
So I want to make sure everyone hears this quote. I love this quote that you just shared. And that's, I never heard you say that before, which is really cool to hear that from my wife. And something, it's always fun having new things you hear from your wife, right? So, and you said, I believe you said this, imposter syndrome is a step to your future greatness.
Yeah.
Your imposter.
The feeling of being an imposter is the step to your next level of greatness.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So, what makes me think of that is I remember growing up in Texas, in North Texas, is that every kind of Christmas time and every spring break, we would usually, get into our family, whatever it was, family suburban, and we would drive to New Mexico and go snow skiing. And as Texans, it's really interesting because Texan skiers, those of you who are listening right now, do not look like Colorado skiers, right? So if you're from Texas, you go and you ski and you literally Scotch guard your jeans and you wear like a bandana around your head. And I don't know, it's a really weird kind of image, but that's what we do when you're in Texas. You always know a Texas skier because they wear jeans, they don't wear ski pants. But I do remember as a kid, when I was younger, my dad did want to get me like a one-piece ski suit, and it was so interesting because he didn't want to buy me a new ski suit every single year, and so what he would do is, as let's say an 8-year-old kid, he would buy me a ski suit that was big enough for a 10-year-old kid, and so he would get the ski suit and he would kind of tie up the ends so the snow wouldn't go in because I wasn't big enough for this 10-year-old ski suit as an 8-year-old. And so, of course, I looked really stupid. I looked really kind of clumsy. I looked really kind of goofy. And probably like from the movie Christmas Story, probably looked like that. And so, of course, as an 8-year-old kid, I'm in this 10-year-old ski suit and I'm looking very awkward. And then the next year, I'm a 9-year-old in a 10-year-old ski suit. And so I look less awkward. And then finally, as a 10-year-old, I'm in this 10-year-old ski suit and I look like the least amount of awkward. And of course, as soon as I outgrow that one, then I'm now an 11-year-old in a 13-year-old ski suit. I'm kind of going through the whole experience again. But to me, this is a perfect metaphor for what you were talking about, is that this idea of being an imposter, right? So I'm an 8-year-old and I'm really feeling like an imposter in a 10-year-old ski suit. Because that's what I was. I was an imposter. But I had to kind of go through the clumsiness of it. And I had to kind of fight through, again, the tentacles of the past programming, of I feel goofy. I don't want to do this. I'm trying to fill out my 10-year-old ski suit. And then eventually I fill it out. And at that moment I had to make a choice. And that is, do I want to stay as a 10-year-old skier or do I want to keep skiing? And if so, all right, now I need a 13-year-old ski suit and I'm going to start that imposter syndrome back over again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The only thing I would tweak on there, and even in the imaging, is that you're the only one that can see the awkwardness. So see, when you walk into a room that you're not sure you belong in, you feel like the 8-year-old in the 10-year-old ski suit, but everybody else sees you as belonging. It's an image we put in our own head that the rest of the world doesn't see unless we start verbalizing it, right? And that's the tricky thing that people will do, and we'll watch people. Is a lot of times, I know when we are doing speaker coaching for public speakers, is they will want to, I don't really know how I got here. Thank you for having me on the stage. I don't know that I belong. This is a really big deal for me. And don't say any of that. You belong. Stand on that stage like you belong. Right. And so if you go into a networking event or you're in a position, all of a sudden you're in a boardroom, you're like, thank you so much. I don't know how I got here. I shouldn't be here. This is really, this is the first time for me. Nobody else knew that. Just go in and own it and belong. You don't need to announce that you're in a ski suit that doesn't fit you. Nobody else can see it.
Yeah, that's very, very, very powerful, because I definitely have been that. I've definitely been that kid, and I've probably even been that adult in times where, again, I'm at the ski slope, and I'm like, can you believe what my dad made me do and made me wear this 10-year-old ski suit? And you're right, it's very possible that no one would even notice that I was wearing a ski suit that was too big if I didn't actually bring attention to it. And I'm interested. It's interesting because the psychology behind that, I believe, is pretty powerful, because again, it's our past programs, it's our tentacles that are really kind of trying to make us feel safe and secure of almost bringing credit to our, again, past identities, our past beliefs, our past programs, and I think one of the ways that we make ourselves feel safe around that is let everyone know about them.
Yeah, well, I think the psychology is, I want to say it first because then you can't hurt me. So if I say I don't belong here, then I don't have that fear anymore that you're going to say it, because now you're agreeing with me. So let me badmouth me first. But we're not giving respect to ourselves. We're not giving respect to others. We're not giving trust to others that they are going to treat us in a kind way. And so we're setting up, we train people how to treat us. And so we are now training them that I am somebody who speaks down about myself. And so it's okay for you to do it too. So if you never say anything like that, it's now disrespectful. So it's interesting because there's definitely people that we treat and speak differently to because of who they are. So I'm interested. We've talked a lot about the different hierarchies. You talked about programming being down below. And so I'm curious if you can think about any experiences you've had where you've noticed the emotions that have come up in you, the behaviors that you're doing are because of a programming that you had as a child that you didn't have control over that programming.
That's interesting. It's a great question. You, as my wife, you probably can point that out. I
am not falling into that trap.
You're not falling into that trap. Look. I mean, what I would say is, again, one of the biggest things in my life was the dumb jock. That was one that I would say even still haunts me to this day a little bit. I mean, so you actually have remnants of that a little bit because like in my case, for example, I did not put any effort towards like my education in the first 18 years. And so there are some kind of foundational educational things that I don't really know. And that even like helping our kids out with our homework, I feel sometimes like not enough. I feel inadequate in those areas. And so I didn't really put forth any effort into to reading or studying or learning anything again until kind of 18 on. And so those were all advanced adult education things, not the foundational concepts. And so I definitely would say those are moments that like doing the kids' homework, that you sometimes kind of fall back into that past program, that past identity of maybe you're not enough, or you're not smart enough, you're not good enough. Of course, at that moment, the way that I kind of quickly kind of reframe that or change that is just realize, well, I just didn't put forth any effort the first 18 years of my life, and my one of the things that Bruce Lipton says, which you and I both love, his wife calls him Brucey, which is really kind of cute. But so we've both been trained by Bruce Lipton, and you were correct on the comment that you said that, or the concept you said about Bruce, that by the age of 7, majority of our kind of beliefs have been created. And it's interesting because I went to a Jesuit school, and what he would say is that the Jesuits would say that give us a child for the first 7 years, and if you do, that child will not depart from us. And basically what the Jesuits were saying is like, give us your boys, give us your girls, for the first 7 years of their life. And we can kind of program them so much that we can kind of shape their reality and shape their future. And which is a really interesting concept. But the other stat that Bruce says is that by the age of 12 or 13, 95% of our beliefs have been completely shaped. That 5% of our choices made on a daily basis are from our conscious mind, and 95% are made from our subconscious mind. And those 95% of our choices, again, are usually programmed by the age of 12 or 13, unless, a great word, unless you kind of unplug yourself from the matrix, unless you have this kind of this moment that I had, and you had in your life, of course, where you decide to take the red pill versus the other pill, and say, you know what? I want to be a conscious being of choice. I don't want to be a drifter. I want to have definite purpose in my life. I want to be a conscious being of choice. I want to make a different choice. I want to take the right road versus the left road. I mean, all these kind of metaphors that we hear in our life, and everyone just has to decide to be able to do that.
I love that you're talking about feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the kids' homework or with studies, because I've learned that that's a universal leash, or a universal programming, is that all of us have a moment from our education where we felt really dumb, and it sticks with us. And so what happens is now I go to learn something as an adult, or I go to help my kids, or my work puts me into training. And because of that programming, that bad experience we had in a classroom at some time, it comes up for us in those moments. Mine was 4th grade. We had to do multiplication problems on the board, and it was a race, or long division at the chalkboard, and it was a race. And I just, as soon as I would get up there, I just could not do it with half the class watching, half the class in a race. It was the panic that would come over me from that. And so I still will think about that when I go into training, and I'm a trainer. And so one thing I think that's really important for people, and I love that you're saying this as somebody who has written so many books and is paid money to go speak to people and educate them, is that this is something that we all have. And so again, on not giving meaning to something, is if you're going into a training, or you're going into a class, or you're reading a book, and there's some anxiety that comes up about it, you are not special or unique. 100% of the people that are sitting there have the same thing. Now, sometimes we can dull it out because of repetition. You keep going to class, you keep going to class, you keep going to class, you keep learning something new. You put more distance, you put more check marks in the win category, but there's always an element of it there. And so I think that's also important, because I think sometimes people, they say the same thing. I'm not a learner. I'm not a student. No. I learn by being in the field, which I get because I'm a tactical in the field learner, but they'll shy away from books or trainings or role play or any of this, saying, oh, I can't do it. I can only do it in real life. I can't do it in role play. That's false. That's completely false. These are stories that we tell ourselves, and then we act in accordance to it, but it wasn't true to begin with. And so when we can start to let go of that, the freedom that we have in our life and what we're able to accomplish goes up so much more. So I'm very grateful that you talked about that, because I hope that other people feel less weird or different or wrong because of it.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that stat, but which makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense that we've all had these kind of at least 1 or 2 moments of negativity around education, and that feeling of not enough, or that feeling of kind of dumbness, which is really interesting. I want to go back to this concept of your authentic self is your best self, and I'm very, and I know you are too, very sensitive when people kind of throw out these kind of statements. It's almost like these statements that they use to kind of be a victim. I don't know what you would call them, but
I think from the SPQ, it to me, what is the? Oh, I'm missing it. where you're using a higher than power of why I can't do something. On second category, it's the last one, if you're mapping it in your head.
I don't know.
On the SPQ, when you say like, I don't believe that other people are going to do the things that I say they're going to do, so I'm not going to sell to them. Principles-based exoneration. There it is. I got it. Okay, so to me, those are other elements of principles-based exoneration. So I'm taking myself out of having to do something based on principle, where there's not really a principle there.
Interesting. Yes, and the SPQ, for people who don't know, is an assessment that we can offer people if they're interested to help understand their reluctances and their limiting beliefs that are holding them back from being the best version of them. And it's extremely important. I mean, it's important to know these things because we believe that, the first step to change anything is that awareness, and you have to have awareness to change, like getting on the scale or anything. You should have that awareness. But I remember something that I do now that I think is so incredibly important, and that's whenever people use these phrases like our authentic self is our best self. What I like to do is I like to immediately go and research the words. I like to go figure out, what's the truth behind this, because there's something in my body and my soul that doesn't like what they're saying. And I don't like that they're using this phrase to be a victim. And I want to serve and help people. I want to protect people from sometimes their past programs. And what's interesting is, and we talk about this in our book, The Mindset of a Sales Warrior, is that if people want to use that word authentic actually comes from the Latin and Greek word that has to do with actually the best version of them, which is really interesting because back many, many years ago, if you were to say someone is authentic, like that is an authentic doctor, what you would be saying is that's the best doctor of all the doctors. But then if you would ask them, well, how are you the best doctor of all the doctors? Well, they would say, well, I've been doing it the longest. I've been studying the most. I wasn't born this way as a great doctor. It's just through all the years and all the efforts and all the struggle that I've put forth to learning how to be a doctor has made me now the best, most accurate doctor. So when I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great because people are saying my authentic self is my best self. Well, now I can go and immediately educate them and go, do you understand what that means though? What that means is your evolving better version of yourself is your authentic self, which means the version of you tomorrow is more authentic than the version of you today, as long as you've learned something new, as long as you are evolving, as long as you're improving, that's your authentic self. And so you're correct. Your authentic self is your best self, as long as we are on the same page of what the word actually means, which is you're the better version of you or the best version of you.
And thank goodness we're all changing. I mean, think about if we were all the 14-year-old versions of ourselves.
It wouldn't be good.
It would not be good.
Wouldn't be good.
Be very angry with the black eyeliner around my lips.
Yeah. So, since I remember again at the age of 18, I started kind of remember, believing these things and started studying these things and started learning these things. And sometime during that time when I was in college, maybe after college, I had started having these kind of awakenings, these moments, and another kind of awakening moment that I had, that I started understanding what programs were doing in our life and how they were affecting me and changing my life, was my first job out of college. Is I was a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch, and I passed my Series 7 in like 22 days. It was like a Merrill Lynch record, which is this test to be able to give advice as a stockbroker, and so I really thought I was like God's gift to stockbroking. That's not how you say it. And so a couple years later, less than 24 months, I get pulled into my branch manager's office. His name was Ron, and he said, Jason, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but you are the hardest working, worst stockbroker I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm like, what do you mean, sir? And he's like, well, you haven't made more than $32,000 in the last 2 years, which is the lowest you can make as a stockbroker, because that's our guaranteed salary we give you. Oh, so no. That's like the worst that you can make. You haven't made any more than that. You haven't sold anything that would be worth more than that. And because at that time you had a draw, and so I had to sell more than what I was getting paid in salary, which I never did. And he goes, I've never seen you work so hard. I mean, you come in before everyone else. You stay later than everyone else. You make hundreds of cold calls a day. I mean, I've never seen a guy work so hard and be so bad at this. And he said, so because of this, I'm going to let you go. I don't want to let you go, but I've done everything I can to try to save you as long as possible here. But you should have been fired a long time ago. I just wanted to give you a shot because how hard you worked. And I was devastated at that moment because I was a hardworking person. And so I went to Barnes & Noble back in those days. There was a Barnes & Noble nearby. And so I sat in one of those company chairs. I just got fired. I went to the self-help section and I found this book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I start reading this book. And it's the only book I've ever read in my entire life, cover to cover. I haven't even read my own books cover to cover after I've written them. And so I read this book cover to cover.
In one sitting.
In one sitting, yeah. And I hadn't even paid for it yet. So of course I bought the book, and I did buy the book afterwards.
This is why Barnes and Nobles are closing.
Doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So I did pay for it afterwards because I highlighted it, marked it up, but I couldn't get off the chair to pay for it. So I wouldn't read it so much. So I read this book, and there's a part in the book that talks about alibis, and it said go through the book and go through the list of alibis and kind of notice or highlight all of the alibis that you have that you're saying are causing you to not be successful. And the alibis were, if only I was older, because I was like 21 years old, and as a stockbroker, so only I was older, then I would be more credible and be able to sell stocks. If only I came from wealth, because there were kids that were there that my age that had generational money or trust fund money, and so they were investing their parents' money, and so I didn't have that. I was just cold calling everyone. If only the Republicans were in office, only Democrats were in office, only taxes were lower, if only gas prices were lower. I mean, it was all these different alibis. And it was so interesting. And I said, man, when was this book written? Because there's so many of these alibis that I personally are writing down, that I'm circling. And this book must have been written like last year. And so I go to the copyright, and the book was written in the 1930s. And this book, history, so people don't know, some people know this, but at the time, this was right after the Great Depression. And Andrew Carnegie was the richest guy who ever lived at that moment. And he went to Napoleon Hill and said, I'm going to commission you to basically follow around all of my rich friends and study, like, what do we do? What do we talk about? What do we think about? Because I believe, Andrew Carnegie, I'm kind of speaking his language right now, because I believe that the reason why people are poor and they're in this Great Depression is because they don't do the things and think the things and say the things that like we say, do, and think as rich people. And so, of course, at that time, it was the Carnegies, it was the Fords, it was the Rockefellers, it was the Mellons, all these different people, the Edisons. And he said, just study them and journal what they do, write a book about them, and let's get that out to the world at a very affordable rate. And that'll change the world because people need access to this information, and just that'll give them the cheat codes of life. And so I was blown away, though, that the alibis from the 1930s of why people were not successful were the exact same alibis that I had in the year 2001 of why I was not successful. And then it said, so turn the page. And so I turned the page, and it said, the only alibi that you need to point on, you need to like pay attention to is if only I like took over my life, and if only I realized that that I am the hero of my story. I'm kind of paraphrasing and making my own version of this. And of course, that was the same thing that my dad would always say, that I am the problem and I am the solution. But for some reason, I had a moment where I didn't believe that. It also said, if only you would find people that were successful doing what you're trying to do. And if only you would copy them, if only you would model them or emulate them. And that was one of the biggest things that I didn't do as a stockbroker. Because I was working harder than everyone else, I thought I was better than everyone else. I was extremely arrogant in the sense that I'm going to outwork everyone else, and therefore I should be more successful than you and you and you and you. And these were people that were, they were making $300,000 a year, and they were playing golf, and they were leaving early and just doing different things. And I just never understood that. And so because of that, I also victimized myself and gave them their own alibis. Oh, well, the reason why they're not able to, they don't work as hard as me is because they came from wealth, because they're older, because, whatever, right? And that's what we do. That's what we do. When other people are more successful than us, for some reason, it's very hard for us to just take a moment and say, is it possible they're more successful because they're thinking things that I'm not thinking, because they're saying things I'm not saying to themselves and others? Or is it because they're doing things that I'm kind of not doing? Like, is there a skill gap that's really going on? And I refuse to believe that. I mean, I refused. It's just because they were older and wealthier than me that is the reason why they were more successful, not because I was doing anything wrong or I wasn't doing anything that they weren't doing. And that was a game-changing moment for me. And so at that moment, at the age of gosh, I don't know, was that probably 22? Let's say 23 now. Age of 23. At that moment, for the first time in my life, I said, I'm going to find the most successful person in the area that I basically suck at. And I think that's an important phrase to use, is that because I think there adds some emotion to it when someone says, so don't say, well, I'm currently not good enough at, or I currently have an area of improvement. Like, those are phrases that we use.
You sound like me.
Yeah, but those are things that like we say to like our on like a performance improvement plan in corporations. What are 3 areas that you can improve on? Well, no one works on that stuff. No one works on the stuff that they want to improve on. What we work on is the stuff that we suck at. If we know that we're really not good, like we and so I've always just taken this belief system of, okay, what is something that I suck at, and who is someone that's doing that like way better than me, and I'm just going to surrender to them. I'm just going to figure out, what do they think about, what do they say, and what do they do, and I'm just going to literally like model them and become them. And that was all because of that book, Think and Grow Rich. Like, that was the defining moment, because that's exactly what Andrew Carnegie asked Napoleon Hill to do, is just give people the cheat codes, give people the success strategies of who are people that are rich when other people are poor, what do they think about, what do they say, and what do they do, and just do that, and everything will be given to you.
Okay, so I love that. And so many people, right, they want to get to your level of success in business and in sales. And so let's play that game. So Jason, what are the top 3 things that you think about during the day?
So top 3 things I think about during the day, just right off the cup, I would say number 1, that I am the problem, I am the solution, I succeed or I fail, it's all on me. I haven't let go of that one. I would say number 2 is what is everyone complaining about right now and everyone afraid of, and how can I turn that into an opportunity? How can I turn that into an advantage? And so again, I love the great philosopher of Warren Buffett. He's still with us. He's phenomenal wisdom. And he says, be opportunistic when others are fearful, and fearful when others are opportunistic. I mean, when everyone else is investing, he is not investing, and when everyone is not investing, he is investing. He's very contrarian, and so to me, the second thing that I'm always thinking about is like, what is everyone scared about right now? Like, for example, during the coronavirus time, people were scared about coronavirus. And so, we found a lot of opportunity in helping people not be afraid of that situation and do the opposite of what everyone's retreating. Let's attack. Or most recently with AI. I mean, everyone is really freaking out about AI, and I understand, but where's the opportunity in that? And how do we take advantage of the opportunities? So I would say the second thing is I'm always obsessed with that. I'm always obsessed with, again, what are the majority of people? What are they afraid of? What are they scared about? What do they say is like an absolute truth that's going to happen that they believe? And then how can I turn that into an opportunity or an advantage for me? And then I would say the third thing is again, just what is the area that I suck at the most, and who is doing it better than me, and I need to follow them. And that'd be people like, Jim Rohn, who taught Tony Robbins, or Wayne Dyer, or Bruce Lipton, or Susan Stageman, or Russell Brunson. Right now I'm following Russell Brunson because he is 1,000 times better in marketing than I am. And so, I suck at marketing compared to Russell Brunson. I'm saying it like right now. So don't follow me on marketing, follow Russell Brunson. But right now I've decided to unplug myself from my belief system of everything I know to be true about marketing, even though I have an MBA in marketing, which is complete bullshit. And because I've learned way more from people like Russell Brunson and Alex Hormozi and other podcasters about marketing than I ever learned from my $40,000 MBA in marketing. So, but it's to choose that and to say, okay, so right now I'm going to dive in. I'm going to obsess. I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to put on a ski suit that's way larger than me as it relates to marketing. I'm going to put on the Russell Brunson marketing ski suit, and I'm going to deal with my imposter syndrome and kind of push through that until I feel like I'm as good at marketing as Russell Brunson. And as soon as I'm as good as marketing Russell Brunson, then I'll find a different area that I suck at, and I will find that person, and I will do the same thing. What do they think about? What do they say? What do they do? And I'm just going to do that. I don't have an ego in the sense of that. And I think that's a big thing that people really struggle with is they go, well, what if my friends, what if my family members, what if they don't like this new version of me? And that's very possible. That's very possible. I'm very fortunate that I have you, that you are always growing and always evolving, just like I am, and you are completely comfortable with the uncomfortableness of who is Jason going to be tomorrow and how is he going to learn and grow. And that's not the case with a lot of relationships. And so I'm very fortunate that I have you that really appreciates that. But what I would encourage everyone to do is I would encourage everyone to be really, really careful with the people they surround themselves with, especially as you're becoming more successful. I know, as you and I have become more successful, the people that we talk to today are not the same people that we talked to 5 years ago or 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And the main reason is because they usually don't like your success, because when you become more successful than your kind of like college friends are, or even just friends recently, it's like you're forcing them to look themselves in the mirror, and they don't like what they see, because what they see is a reflection of who they could be if they just put forth the discipline. They just put forth the effort. So it's not that it's not possible for them or they're not capable. It's that you now are someone in their life that says, or that's kind of an example of someone that's decided to kind of change their life by changing their programming, changing their reality, and they just haven't put forth the effort to do that, and so it's very uncomfortable being around you.
Well, and yeah, I think people have an aversion to change, period, whatever that is. We think about the number one thing in yearbooks when we were growing up. It's like, never change, stay this way, right? They're the same. And so it's just change in itself, whatever it is. And so, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now we know what you think about. So Jason Forrest, what are the things that you say that that others don't say, or things that you've learned to say that have made you more successful than when you were not saying them? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I would definitely say, I would definitely say, kind of not to like cliche phrases, but like where there's a will, there's a way. So I think that's important. I would definitely say things like, again, the famous Wayne Dyer quote of, when I change the way I look at things I look at change. I'm a big student of just really what the Bible says, and learning, what does the scripture say to do in certain concepts. I love, I'm trying to think of like phrases that I use a lot. What are phrases you hear me say a lot?
Well, what's come for me is something that you used to say that was very interesting. You don't say it very much anymore, but something super annoying or like to me infuriating would happen. And do you remember what you would say?
No, I'm really interested now.
You would just go, dumb. And the reframe there is that this is not infuriating. It's not, you weren't frazzled by it like me. I'm going to, blow something up right now. I'm so mad. And you're just like, it's just dumb. It's just dumb. That's what it is. And so it's a way of just, to me, of you just being very not emotionally charged on things that would have me very emotionally charged. You're like, it's just a dumb thing. It's just a dumb mistake. It's just a dumb thing. So,
yeah. Well, it brings you back to, I think it's extremely important to, again, see things as they are and never kind of better or worse than they are, like see things for what they are. Right. So if I was saying that to you, it's, this is not a forever thing. This is not something that's going to impact you the rest of your life. This is just kind of a dumb mistake or a dumb moment or a dumb incident or that or one of our children kind of said a dumb thing or they did something dumb. But it wasn't something that was going to, again, kind of last forever, which I think is important. So that's definitely a phrase I say a lot, is see things as they are and not better or worse than they are.
That's true. Well, and I think with that too, though, your emotional vocabulary is very large. And so you're very specific with the feelings and emotions around things instead of using the generic terms, which I think help people to feel like keep you in the right space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I definitely hear that. What they say, like most people can only even name 7. I think the 7 is the magic number of emotional words that somebody can even come up with. And so, and then they're trying to put in emotional words like good and bad that aren't even emotions. And so I've seen that really grow and be very specific for you.
Well, I think it's important. Well, and just the idea of your emotional vocabulary. I mean, that's the easiest way to understand that would be like, how bilingual are you? So meaning that like I have a very limited vocabulary in Spanish, and so when we go to Mexico, I am able to find the bathroom. I am able to ask for a beer. There's certain things that I'm able to use, but I can't get very far just figuring out where the bathroom is and figuring out, can I get another beer, sir? But that to me it would be a perfect example of your emotional vocabulary, is that it's hard to understand how other people feel, and it's hard to express like how you feel about something if you only have a few words in your emotional vocabulary. So like, for example, our 16-year-old son right now, he's going through this phase that he hates everything. He hates how his teachers make him do things. He hates his boss. He hates
standing in lines.
Standing in lines. He hates the fact that we were just on a family vacation in Mexico, and he hates that he has to wear a life jacket in the ocean. He hates that. And so, the thing that I've been trying to work with him on is like, you really want to, I was like, son, you really want to kind of pick maybe like 1 or 2 things in your life that you really hate, and just kind of that's what you hate. Like, so what are those things, and like, again, like I'm going to say it out there, I hate sex trafficking. So I hate that. Well, when you start to like anchor something with, I hate sex trafficking, well, you can't use that same word now and say, I also hate that I have to wear a life jacket in the ocean. Like, you can't do that. And so to me, like that's so critical, is to where words are beautiful. Again, this is from a kid who had a 2.2 GPA, and now I'm like obsessed with words and love words, and words are so beautiful and they shape everything. But just, if you can give yourself that gift of okay, so I hate, what do I hate? What's something I hate? I hate sex trafficking. Okay, well, now in this case where I have to wear a life jacket, in the ocean. So do I really hate that? No, I don't hate that. So what's another word I can use? Well, it's annoying. Okay. Well, that's way better, because you wouldn't say sex trafficking is annoying. Like that wouldn't work, right? It's out of place. And so that's a very important thing for me, because one of the things I know, and I know scripture talks about this as well, is that as soon as you verbalize something, as soon as you say something out loud, you hear it back to yourself, and it starts to self-program. So you have self-talk, which is, I hate something, or I'm annoyed with something, or I love something, or I like something, or, so you say that to yourself, but when you say it out loud, it creates another, it creates more meaning over you, and it creates more power over you when you say it out loud. So we have to be very, very careful with our words that we use. One, we need to increase our emotional vocabulary and really decide, and anchor certain things like I hate this versus I'm annoyed with this. But at the same time, we also want to be careful whenever we say something out loud. It will create kind of a more, you'll create bigger power over our life.
I love it. Okay, so we talked about what you think about and what you say. So I want you to think about your actions and behaviors before you were at your level of success, and to now. So what are the behaviors now of success that you could share with us?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is before I, again, was successful at what I'm doing today. Because I think success is an interesting word, because I think everyone is everyone is successful at kind of what they're doing, meaning that everyone's like everyone's habits and rituals and choices creates their success. So, for example, like a person who right now is making $35,000 a year at whatever they're doing, they're very successful at that. Like, so I was very successful making $32,000 a year as a stockbroker because I was doing certain things and not doing certain things that created my success based upon my thoughts, based upon my emotions, motivations, behaviors, and therefore the result of making or earning that 32,000.
Yeah, perfect. So I agree with you. And so I love you've shared all of these people that you're studying right now to get to your next level of success, which I think is always fun to hear because we'll hear people that you think, has this person at their level like made it and you're saying, I have not made it. Like there's the next level I'm going to. But what about, let's think of the earlier version of you or other people that are not at your level of success yet. What are behaviors that they could model from you to help them get to your level of success?
Sure. So I would say number one, I would say is basically attack versus wait. So you need to initiate in life versus wait. And so what does that mean? It means that you need to go to bed. Like, before I go to bed every night, I'm thinking about what am I going to accomplish the next day. So I'm going to bed thinking about what I'm going to do the next day, and my day is already planned out as far as how I'm going to make the next day something that I want to create. So you want to initiate, you want to attack in order to kind of win. What you don't want to do is you don't want to wait. And so a lot of people, what they do is they wake up in the morning and the first thing they do is they check their email, they check their phone, and they're kind of waiting for an order. They're waiting for their boss to tell them what to do, or they're waiting for again, something from their email to be able to tell them what to do. So I would say number one is you 100% need to initiate. You do not need to wait. Number two is you always want to think ahead and plan. So like I said before, as far as, what am I wanting to accomplish tomorrow or next week or next month or next quarter or next year? And so you always want to kind of think ahead and plan. And at the same time of think ahead and plan, I'm a big fan of thinking from the end and planning backwards. And so, who do I want to become and what do I want to earn and what do we want to do as a family, by the end of next year? And what does that look like and sound like and taste like? And what are the experiences we're going to have? And so how can I kind of like think from the end and say, okay, well, if that's the consequence of what I want, that's the success of what I want, the result of what I want, then again, what do I need to do in order to achieve that? What do I need to say? What do I need to believe? What do I need to surround myself with? Who do I need to become? Like just a lot of like kind of thinking from the end, I would say. And then I would say the third really success kind of factor that I really live by is just being really, really mindful of what am I putting into my mind and my body. And I'm not saying this is a negative thing for anyone. I don't watch sports on the weekends, and I'm not saying that we can't watch sports. I just don't have time to watch sports. I don't have time to play golf. I don't have time to do these things that take 3, 4, 5 hours all day on a Saturday or Sunday. And if I did have time, then I probably could watch it. And I don't want to shame anyone who's not watching it. I just know that I want to be very mindful of what I'm putting into my body, and from a mental perspective, from a physical perspective, who I'm surrounding myself with. And I know that, what I'm thinking about today is what I'm thinking about today is based upon what I know. And so if I want to change my results, then I need to change what I think about, which means I need to change what I know. And so in order to change what I know, I need to go like actively read and actively watch YouTubes and podcasts and listen to podcasts like we're doing, and in order to really kind of shape and change my belief systems. And so that would be probably that last thing is probably the most important. And that's, if you don't like who you are today is not who you are, it's who you were. And meaning that like everything that you kind of read and subjected yourself to and hung around in the last kind of month is is shaped you for who you are today. And so if you want to change tomorrow, then you just have to kind of change your past. So, I mean, you have to say, okay, well, if who I hung around and what I read and what I watched and what I did, it has led me up to my results of today and how I'm thinking about today, then who do I want to be a month from now? Okay, well then now I just need to kind of just change all that. I just need to start listening to different things and studying different people and doing different habits and choices, and all that will change.
I love it. Thank you for sharing all that with us.
Awesome. All right. So to kind of wrap this up, let's give people some real strong kind of takeaways. So tell us what people should say, do, or think about if they wanted to change their programs.
They should be very conscious of what they listen to. So take complete control of it. So not whatever plays on the radio, not whatever's the next thing coming up, but plan out what you're listening to, book-wise, radio-wise, podcast-wise, and also people-wise, who you're calling at what times.
Thank you.
Yes. Jason, what do people need to say, think, or do differently in order to change their programming?
I think just realize it's not a fixed thing. It is not fixed. It is a constantly evolving thing. And you could either be a conscious being of choice and realize that starting today, you can change your programs, or you can just be kind of victimized by the programs that are happening. So programs are happening regardless if you like it or not. You just have the ability to do something about it.
Thank you.
All right, last one. Tell us something that people can say, do, or think about in order to change their programs.
They can do a self-evaluation. So after you talk to somebody, listen to a song, listen to a podcast, check your emotional state. And so if you feel strong, if you feel powerful, if you feel capable, if you feel connected, then great. That's probably something that's benefiting you to keep listening to. And if you feel angry, if you feel frustrated, if you feel like a victim, if you feel hopeless and powerless, probably something that could be eliminated from your life.
Awesome. All right. So I hope this session today has been beneficial for everyone. I know this is one of these concepts that has 100% changed my life, and I know has changed Mary's life as well. One of the things that Bruce Lipton says is that our subconscious is really controlling 95% of our decisions that we make on a daily basis, and only 5% is controlled by our conscious mind. But what he also says is that 5% is very powerful. Is that we have the ability in that 5% to reprogram our hard drive and to really think of our brain as the most powerful machine on the planet, but it's only as good as the driver, and to also think of our brain as, again, this computer system that has the ability to be reprogrammed, just like when you kind of upgrade your operating system or you kind of change out your programs and to create a different result, like a certain file, and so you kind of update the file. That's exactly how our brain works as well. What's amazing about it is we have the ability to do that. We have the ability to wake up in a given moment and decide to be someone that's the kind of the master hacker of our life, to go into our hard drive, to kind of reprogram it to operate differently, to do different things. And we have the ability to do that. And so until next time, this is Jason Forrest. Push yourself to become a better version of you.